Hey everyone, and thanks for checking out this movie review. So, we are now in a new month, the month of August here, so we will also be starting a new horror franchise to take a look at. So far, I've done Child's Play, Nightmare on Elm Street, and so now I'll be doing maybe the most well-known horror franchise, or certainly one of the biggest. In terms of movie, it has 12, and of course, I'm talking about Friday the 13th, which we actually have this month. The second Friday of the month is Friday the 13th. So I thought it would be a good month to review these 12 films, the original from 1980 through Jason X, Freddy versus Jason, and then the remake from 2009. So first thing, as you notice, I have these as part of a set, 1 through 8 anyway. So when I'm talking about the first 8, I'll be using this set, holding it up. I don't have the individual movies. I did get this set pretty cheap though, because when the deluxe package came out last year, this one became much cheaper. And on Blu-ray, I got it for less. I think it was just over 15, like 15, $16, which is a really good deal, I thought. So yeah, I have the first 8 on Blu-ray. So we'll just go ahead and get into it. Of course, we're going to start today with the original Friday the 13th from 1980. It's an American slasher film produced and directed by Sean S. Cunningham, written by Victor Miller, and it stars Betsy Palmer as Mrs. Voorhees, Adrienne King as Alice, Harry Crosby as Bill, Janine Taylor as Marcy, Laurie Bertram as Brenda, Kevin Bacon as Jack, and Mark Nelson as Ned. And basically, the plot follows a group of teenage camp counselors who are murdered one by one by an unknown killer. They attempt to reopen an abandoned summer camp, Camp Crystal Lake, as it's called. So the film opens in 1958, actually, at Camp Crystal Lake. A couple of counselors sneak into a storage cabin to have sex, where an unseen assailant murders them. So then cut to 21 years later, where there's a camp counselor named Annie Phillips who's driven halfway to this reopened Camp Crystal Lake by a truck driver named Enos. And despite the warnings from an elderly crazy Ralph, um, this basically crazy Ralph is this guy that tells her, "Don't go to that camp. It's cursed. You're not going to come back," kind of thing. So she ends up getting a ride from Enos, who warns her about the camp's troubled past, kind of tells her what happens, beginning when a young boy drowned at Crystal Lake in 1957, so a year before the film opened in 1958. After being dropped off, she hits another ride from an unseen person who chases her into the woods and slashes her throat. So, and then meanwhile at camp, the other counselors, Ned, Jack, Bill, Marcy, Brenda, and Alice, along with the owner, Steve Christie, refurbish cabins and facilities. As a thunderstorm approaches, Steve leaves the campground to stock supplies. Ned, one of the counselors, sees someone walk into a cabin and follows them. A couple of them go to a cabin and have sex, which is including Kevin Bacon's character. And this is where he takes the arrow through the throat from underneath the bed. And then Marcy, who he was having sex with, she gets an axe in the face by the unseen killer. So that's kind of how we're introduced to the film. That's sort of the first third of it, I guess you could say. Um, so yeah, the original Friday the 13th. Now I'll get into my review, which will contain spoilers. So if you haven't seen this movie after 41 years, check out now if you don't want to be spoiled. Um, so yeah, this was my first time watching the movie from beginning to end, Friday the 13th from 1980. As hard as that is to believe, I was familiar with it. I've seen bits and pieces of it, but like I guess from watching it all the way through from beginning to end, it's the first time I've done that for whatever reason. As I said, I've gotten into horror movies more as I've gotten older. Wasn't so much into them when I was younger. I'm not sure why that is, but we'll just go ahead and get this party started with my review of the original 1980 Friday the 13th. So first, we'll start with the pros. Um, I like the lore, the urban legend aspects of this movie, as it relates to Camp Crystal Lake and the boy Jason who drowns. I think they did a pretty good job of setting up this urban legend. It kind of gets you into the movie. It kind of hooks you a little bit at the beginning, and because you got to find out what's going on. And urban legends are interesting, and this one's certainly interesting. I think it works really well in this movie. How they introduced the lore, I should say, and the sort of the backstory. I also really enjoy the whodunit POV style aspect of the movie, where we get the point of view from the killer, basically seeing the victims as they're crying out in terror. I really enjoy that. I think it works well in this movie. And of course, I like a good mystery, and this movie is a mystery because you don't see who the killer is until the very end, like the last 20 to 25 minutes of the movie, maybe. And so they do a really good job of keeping that hidden and a kind of a guess who sort of game throughout the movie for the viewer. So that's really good. I like the setting of the camp and sort of the small town outdoorsy, away from a lot of civilization kind of thing. That sets up well for a slasher movie. Um, Really good in this movie. Really enjoy that. I really like the atmosphere, particularly in the third act of the movie when we get the dark and stormy night. Which I know some people might say that's kind of cliche, and they do that up. And I don't know, it works though, especially in a camp setting like this. And it just really adds to the tension and the suspense, and I really enjoyed it. Um, that dark environment with the lightning and the thunder and the rain. I love the practical effects by the great Tom Savini in this movie. That they actually hold up pretty well, despite being over 40 years old. Yeah, the kill with the kills and the gore, just great practical effects. We don't get any of the CGI stuff yet, because of course in 1980 they didn't have that. So that was really good. Betsy Palmer, I think, is the best as far as character goes. Obviously, she's the best one in this movie. I think Betsy Palmer does a great job as Pamela Voorhees. She's really creepy, and with the not knowing who the killer was throughout the whole movie, once we finally meet her, spoiler alert, Pamela Voorhees is the killer. Like I said, you should have checked out when I warned you if you didn't want to know. But she's really creepy and just a very effective killer that really worked very believable in her performance and with that character. I'm not a big fan of jump scares, but the one big jump scare they have at the end of this movie, of course, is really effective, and that's where Alice is floating in the canoe after she took care of Mrs. Voorhees, and it's the next day, and you think all is well, and we got nice music playing in the background, and all of a sudden this deformed like teenager or kid even jumps out of the lake and grabs her and pulls her under the water. That's a really good. If you're going to do a jump scare, that was a good jump scare. It really was. It wasn't necessarily predictable. I only knew about it because, of course, I'd seen that part of the movie from the individual scenes and cutaways and stuff. But yeah, that's really good. Got to talk about the score to this movie. It's got a really good score for a slasher film. The sort of the audio cues that they use during the chases, the kills. Of course, we got the famous. I'm not doing it right, I know, but you know what I'm. I think it's supposed to be after "kill her, mom." He's like, I don't know. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. I know I suck at it, but that really makes for heightened suspense. And when you hear that cue, you obviously know what you're watching. But yeah, the great audio, the great score to this movie. And overall, it was just a fun, good popcorn movie to watch in the dark. I really enjoyed the killer at the end. The kills were good, and it's just a really good overall mystery movie that keeps you, or at least it did for me. It kept me enthralled in the film. There are some cons with this movie that we'll talk about now, namely the characters. Other than Pamela Voorhees, of course, like the teenage characters, they don't have a lot of development, and they're just kind of. You really feel like they're just kind of the cliche teenagers that are just kind of thrown in this movie to be killed. I mean, we don't really learn a lot about them. They're just kind of stock characters, which we tend to get in a lot of these slasher movies and horror movies. Not the greatest acting by him either, as far as the teenage characters go. Aside from Betsy Palmer, she's a good actress. Um, it's a little far fetched, though, that this middle aged woman, Betsy Palmer, could do some of the killings that are done earlier in the movie. Um, Again, that's not enough to take away from the movie, but it does kind of make you pause, like, really? Well, she's a really strong middle aged woman. Um, there's not a lot of story on how these teenagers come together. It's basically this camp's been closed for over 20 years, and they're the counselors now, and they're trying to come back together to open this camp, and then they start getting killed one by one. So, of course, these movies never been known for their story. That's aside, as I said, from the lore and the urban legend part of it. That part was really good in this movie. But yeah, they're basically just there to get killed and have sex, the characters. And that's really what the story is as well, to get killed and have sex. There's some pretty wonky and bad dialogue in this movie, kind of that 70s, early 80s written dialogue from in horror movies between the characters, which, as I said, don't do a great job of acting anyway. And it's not a really creative movie in that it's as stated, it's a ripoff of Halloween, basically. Even though I don't think Sean Cunningham has ever admitted that, the writers have, everybody else involved in the movies pretty much have. So I don't know though, but overall, it's a really good, effective slasher movie. The original Friday the 13th from 1980. I really enjoyed it. Of course, we don't get a lot of Jason in this movie. You see him on the front here. This is the movie where he's not the killer, and we only see him in his sort of messed up human form as a kid at the end. And I don't know if it's we're supposed to take it as a dream sequence or not. Some people say we are. I don't know. Otherwise, I think it was. I kind of took it more like he really did pull her under the water and apparently let her go, and because we know he's out there from what's to come. But yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed this movie. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 as far as rating it goes. Um, yeah, 8 out of 10 for the original Friday the 13th from 1980. I enjoyed it. Aside from the teenage characters and some conveniences. It's a good slash movie with a good backstory. So go ahead and comment down below, guys. Give me your thoughts on this movie, The Friday the 13th from 1980 by Sean Cunningham. Like my video and subscribe to my channel to see future Friday the 13th movie reviews, as well as my ranking of all 12 movies at the end of this month, and other horror movies as we go here that I'll be reviewing. So thank you for watching this video. Have a great day. Bye.